Hi, Spyro Girl. Yes, everyone, I decided on a whim to do a little bit of a reading / commentary. I've heard about this series of essays by Colin Kaepernick that were to be published. I guess I missed them because they've been out for a couple of days now. But I thought just on a lark, I'd go over the first one. It's not that long, and maybe I'm just missing out on reading something today since it's Sunday. So we'll take a look at this. Hello, Deco, Ethan the Big Elf, Brian Has Opinions, formerly the Broken Baller, No One Nowhere, Green Death, Mike R, Sam Coors, Big Assassin 80, Pink Call, Driving Ape Man, Sir Emden, Jetix, Yes or Toon Disney, No VSAP, Peter Silac, Haley's 313. I didn't mean to sing it like that, but it just came out that way. Little Colleen Bernier there for you. Old Guy Gamer, hello. John Smith, the gayest person on YouTube. Moses Webster. And Jim Heelis, bored? Maybe a little bit before bedtime, because I'll be going to bed here in a little bit, but I thought I'd get this out of the way. And hopefully relatively quickly, so don't run into anyone who's about to do a stream at 7. So let's move on quickly. A future worth building. The Demand for Abolition, by Colin Kaepernick. This article is part of Abolition for the People, a series brought to you by a partnership between Kaepernick Publishing and Level, a Medium publication for and about the lives of Black and brown men. The series, which comprises 30 essays and conversations over 4 weeks, points to the crucial conclusion that policing and prisons are not solutions for the issues and people the state deems social problems. Social problems, guys. That's what criminals are. And calls for a future that puts justice and the needs of the community first. Well, if this doesn't sound like restorative justice, I don't know what does, but let's find out what Colin Kaepernick, who is obviously a brilliant scholar, has to say on the subject. In the wake of the state-sanctioned lynchings of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. Yes, the state-sanctioned lynchings for which the officers involved were either investigated and or prosecuted criminally. Yes. Who have been vilified nationwide. Yes. Worldwide, in the case of George Floyd, and you could say Breonna Taylor. The United States has been forced to grapple with not only the devastation of police terrorism, but also the institutions that constitute, enhance, and expand the carceral state. Carceral. I'll admit my vocabulary is impoverished in that regard. In response, uprisings. Uprisings, not riots. Uprisings demanding the defunding of the police have spread across the country with no signs of stopping. Those who have been terrorized by law enforcement, those who have had enough of their very existence being criminalized, and those who have dedicated their lives to the cause of liberation by any means necessary are demanding the abolition of the carceral state, the institutions, structures, and practices of anti-Black, state-sanctioned violence that violates the fundamental humanity of Black and Indigenous people and people of color. Black and Indigenous people and people of color. Okay. It's been 4 years since I, as in Colin Kaepernick, first protested during the Star-Spangled Banner. Yes, it was a protest, everyone. It was not him sitting down at first and just not taking part in the national anthem because he was throwing a hissy fit over a contract dispute with his team at the time. No, it was a protest. He had to be told, by the way, by a veteran that maybe you should kneel instead of just not standing, because that's a little disrespectful. Yeah. At the time, my protest was tethered to my understanding that something was not right in my bank balance. I saw the bodies of Black people left dead in the streets. I saw them left dead in their cars. I saw them left dead in their backyards. Where were you all this time? Okay. I saw Black death all around me at the hands of the police. Yeah. That's where the majority happens, of course. Of course. I saw little to no accountability for police officers who had murdered them. Yeah, you know, every cop in every high-profile death of a black person in the last 10 years has totally gotten off scot-free. They just really have. Nobody pays attention. They just walk away. It's like a license to kill, you know? It is not a matter of bad apples spoiling the bunch, but interlocking systems that are rotten to their core. And see, this is where there's always the seed of truth in otherwise hyperbole. Sure, there are issues in policing. There are training issues. There's a whole bunch of things that might rightly be pointed to as needing reform or redress or something. And systemic problems demand systemic solutions. All right. I am ready to learn. What are the solutions to the problems? Because that's what I'm here for, solutions. Predictably, the political mainstream has responded to recent uprisings, everyone. Remember, uprisings. Because if you say uprising, you don't have to distinguish between protests and riots. It's all kind of one thing, and they're all legitimized, you know. Recent uprisings, by shifting the demands to defund police to reformist interventions centered on acceptable modes of enacting death and violence upon oppressed peoples. As such, conventional paths and strategies for achieving justice, quote unquote, for anti-black police terror and violence are all too often couched in campaigns and desires for convictions, punishment, and incarceration. These modes of reactionary justice fail to remedy the uninterrupted death caused by policing and prisons and frequently leave us disheartened, disjointed, and disillusioned. Despite the steady cascade of anti-black violence across the country, I am hopeful we can build a future that imagines justice differently, a future without the terror of policing and prisons, a future that prioritizes harm reduction, redemption, and public well-being in order to create a more just and humane world. Restorative justice. Abolition for the people. The movement for a future without policing and prisons is a partnership between Kaepernick Publishing and the Medium publication level. Yeah, we just talked about that. That builds on a rich tradition of Black organizing and freedom fighting. This project seeks to introduce abolitionist values, practices, histories, and ambitions to an audience that is looking for a path to a better and more just society. I'm looking for it. Over the next 4 weeks, we will publish 30 essays, boy, I'm going to have my hands full, from political prisoners, grassroots organizers, movement leaders, scholars, and family members of those affected by anti-Black state violence and terrorism. Oh, so you're gonna ignore violence from any other part of society, just state violence. Okay. Each week, we will bring a collection centered around a different theme: police and policing, prisons and carcerality, fuck reform. I agree. We need to have fuck reform. Because if there's one thing around here that needs some reimagining, it's fucking. I tell you what. Fuck reform. I'm sorry. That, in the context of everything else in that sentence, that is just amazingly hilarious. And abolition now. To understand the necessity and urgency of abolition, we must first understand the genesis and histories of the institutions and practices we must abolish. Oh man, I should, if I could get away with it, I'd rename the stream "Fuck Reform," but I think somehow that would not make me popular amongst the algorithm. All right, police and policing. The central intent of policing is to surveil, terrorize, capture, and kill marginalized populations, specifically Black folks. Get this, guys. Policing is a hit squad for Black people. All right. In her edited collection, Imprisoned Intellectuals, Joy James puts the United States under the magnifying glass. Quote, "The world can see what goes on in the tombs of America as Black people are being slowly strangled and suffocated to death," unquote. She writes, "When the world witnessed the police choke Eric Garner..." Wait, let me try again. When the world witnessed the police choke Eric Garner to death as he gasped, "I can't breathe," That is an act of terror. When a cop car pulled up to Tamir Rice, a 12-year-old boy, and the cop shot him in less than two seconds, that is an act of terror. Okay, when police broke down 92-year-old Katherine Johnson's front door, unloaded 39 rounds, and left 5 bullets buried in her body, that is an act of terror. We recognize it as anti-Black violence and control, while law enforcement and the injustice system see it as essential to the very nature of the job. Let's gloss over each one of those instances. Let us set aside all of the things that went wrong specifically in the Tamir Rice case, as in the 911 call, the 911 operator not telling police that the person involved was probably a youth and that the gun was probably fake, that kid was waving a gun at police officers who pulled up expecting someone armed with a gun, and that the kid had taken out the orange cap inside the fake gun that denotes it as a fake gun. A lot of things went wrong by a lot of people making a lot of bad choices that day. But never mind that, it was state-sanctioned murder of a Black kid. And I'm certain that if you look at each of these cases, the cops involved totally got off scot-free. There were no investigations, nothing. They all have their jobs still, etc. Yeah. An essential to the very nature of the job, right? The political project of anti-Blackness. The political project of anti-Blackness has always been central to the enforcement of laws and legal codes in the United States. Sally E. Haddon's Slave Patrols, Law and Violence in Virginia and the Carolinas lays out an irrefutable case that slavery and policing are linked both in logic and philosophy. South Carolina's 1701 Act for the Better Ordering of Slaves in 1701, so 319 years ago, okay, declared that any enslaved African, quote-unquote, resisting a white person could be beaten like Rodney King in 1991, maimed like Jacob Blake in 2020, assaulted like Marlene Pinnock in 2014, or killed if they, quote-unquote, resisted like Corinne Gaines in 2016, or took flight like Rayshard Brooks in 2020. Wow. So the 1701 Act for Better Ordering Slaves is still in effect and is what the police abide by. Got it. The more that I have learned about the history and evolution of policing in the United States, the more I understand its roots in white supremacy and anti-Blackness. Black Panther Party co-founder Huey P. Newton once said, quote, "The police are in our community not to promote our welfare or for our security or our safety, but they are there to contain us, to brutalize us, and to murder us," unquote. The ever-present threat of premature death at the hands, knees, chokeholds, tasers, and guns of law enforcement has only further ingrained its anti-Black foundation into the institutions of policing. In order to eradicate anti-Blackness, we must also abolish the police. The abolition of one without the other is impossible. Prisons and carcerality. Is that a real word? I really need to look that up. As part of the reentry work I have done with Kevin Livingston from 100 Suits for 100 Men at Rikers Island, I have spent time with young Black men no older than 20. The young men there explained the dehumanizing conditions in the prison that range from denial of literature to physical assault. Is that physical assault by the guards, or is that physical assault amongst prisoners? And also, prison is not a place that you're supposed to enjoy. They have been criminalized and caged. Criminalized as though that's something that is done to them? Oh, okay. In most cases, for being redlined into economic despair. Okay. Forever emblazoned in my memory are the words of one of the young Black men, quote, "You love us when no one else does," unquote. The young brother was seeking love, he was seeking care, he was seeking a space that valued his life. I don't have any context for who you're talking about or why, but I have a feeling that of the 100 men no older than 20 you were talking about, I'm certain that most of them were not there for no reason at all, of their own volition. I'm just guessing. What he received was hate and what Ruth Wilson Gilmore would call organized abandonment. As Angela Y. Davis has written, quote, prisons do not disappear problems, they disappear human beings, unquote. I hate to tell you this, there are some human beings out there that are in and of themselves problems for the rest of society. Not because of what they are, but because of what they do. That's scribe talking. Prisons do not contain a, quote, criminal population, unquote, running rampant, but rather a population that society has repeatedly failed. You're going to have to give me some examples. Uprisings in response to the hellish conditions black folk have been forced to live in, both in and out of prison, have been criminalized as well. In her book, Are Prisons Obsolete?, Davis effectively analyzes the purpose of prisons. Quote, these prisons represent the application of sophisticated modern technology dedicated entirely to the task of social control, unquote, she writes. Quote, and they isolate, regulate, and surveil more effectively than anything that has preceded them, unquote. Well, I suppose if you have a very restricted territory where people can't really leave, then yeah, you can surveil them a hell of a lot more effectively than the open world. So sure. An institution based on social control instead of social well-being is an institution that needs to be abolished. And replaced with what exactly? Oh, here we go. Fuck reform. This is what I've been waiting for. I recently revisited the 2016 post-game interview when I was first asked about not standing during the Star-Spangled Banner. Yeah, not standing, not kneeling, just not standing. One of the reporters inquired about the reasoning behind my dissent. Quote, there's a lot of things that need to change, I replied. Quote, one specifically is police brutality. There's people being murdered unjustly and not being held accountable. Cops are getting paid leave for killing people. That's not right. That's not right by anyone's standards, unquote. Unconsciously. Oh, he was so brilliant, didn't even realize it. Unconsciously, my critique of police terrorism was fastened to a reformist framework. My want for accountability focused on the cops receiving convictions and punishment, not acquittals and paid vacations. But I had missed the larger picture. The focus on individual punishment will never alter the outcome of a system rooted in Black death. I wanted change. I wanted it to stop. I wanted to reform what I saw. Yet the reforms often proposed, use of force policies, body cameras, more training, and police accountability, were the same recycled police reforms consistently proposed in the past. And in both the past and the present, these reforms have done nothing to stop the actions that force us to hashtag say their names. Similarly, suggested prison reforms, new jail construction to address crowding and dehumanizing living conditions, and technological monitoring that essentially creates open-air prisons, have not and cannot eliminate the harm of the carceral state. The thread that ties all of these reforms together is the increased investment of capital into the carceral state. I watched an interview with Ruth Wilson Gilmore on geographies of racial capitalism. In it, she said that, quote, capitalism requires inequality and racism enshrines it, unquote. It made me think about the economies of exploitation, deprivation, and captivity that propel forward incarceration and the construction of prisons. These economies disproportionately target Black, brown, and poor white people. Poor white people? What? It made me think about how the carceral state is central to the machinery of racial capitalism. So wait, white people can also... Wait, what? I began to ask myself the question, what is being reformed or reformulated? Ultimately, I realized that seeking reform would make me an active participant in reforming, reshaping, and rebranding institutional white supremacy. But what about the poor white people? Oppression and death. This constant re-interrogation of my own analysis has been part of my political evolution. Quote, one should recall that the movement for reforming the prisons, for controlling their functioning, is not a recent phenomenon, unquote. Michael Foucault wrote in Discipline and Punish. Okay. Quote, it does not even seem to have originated in a recognition of failure. Prison reform is virtually contemporary with the prison itself. It constitutes, as it were, its program, unquote. Okay. Reform, at its core, preserves, enhances, and further entrenches policing and prisons into the United States social order. Abolition is the only way to secure a future beyond anti-black institutions of social control, violence, and premature death. Abolition now. Abolition is a means to create a future in which justice and liberation are fundamental to realizing the full humanity of communities. Realizing the full humanity of communities, okay? Practices of abolitionists are focused on harm reduction, public health, and the well-being of people. You notice how in all of this rhetoric, I'm not hearing any, like, functional solutions or replacements for these things. Maybe those will come in future essays. I'm assuming future essays of the 30 that are coming our way, it'll be addressed. Demands to defund the police and prisons are one of the ways to first realize the goals of investing in people and divesting from punishment and, in time, progress to the complete abolition of the carceral state, including police and policing. Imagine a world without police or prisons. Will you for a moment? Imagine the CHOP or the Chaz. No police, no order, no law enforcement. Wasn't it just a paradise? Yeah. To be clear, the abolition of these institutions is not the absence of accountability. What? Wait. You're abolishing law enforcement and you're abolishing prisons. So there is no one to keep order over those parts and those individuals in society that are causing problems for everybody else. And there's nowhere to put the people doing such things because you abolish them. But it's not having an absence of accountability. Oh, okay. Well, how do you hold people accountable without police or policing or prisons? I look forward to finding out over the future essays. I really do. Because this is just a smorgasbord of restorative justice ideas, seemingly. The abolition of these institutions is not the absence of accountability, but rather the establishment of transformative and restorative processes, that are not rooted in punitive practices. By abolishing policing and prisons, not only can we eliminate white supremacist establishments, but we can create a space for budgets to be reinvested directly into communities to address mental health needs, homelessness and houselessness. Okay. Access, does that mean like if you're in an apartment living? Like I'm houselessness because I'm houseless because I'm living in an apartment. Access to education and job creation, as well as community-based methods of accountability. Community-based methods of accountability. Community-based methods of... So, vigilantism. This is a future that centers the needs of the people, a future that will make us safer, healthier, and truly free. Over the next month, my hope is that you, the reader, will have confronted the white supremacist underpinnings of policing and prisons and the state-sanctioned oppression, destruction, and execution of Black and Indigenous people and people of color. You will understand the ways that reform has further legitimized policing and prisons into society. You will learn about the ways that abolishing policing and prisons can create a society able to invest in the well-being of the people. My sincere hope is that you will be forced to make a moral choice by the time you finish these essays. Will you continue to be actively complicit in the perpetuation of these systems, or will you take action to dismantle them for the benefit of a just future? This moment in history will not be forgotten, nor will the actions you, I, and others take. Another world is possible, a world grounded in love, justice, and accountability, a world grounded in safety and good health, a world grounded in meeting the needs of the people. Abolition now, abolition for the people. Dong dong! All righty. Thank you, Mike R. Where's the bingo card? Well, this wasn't a TEDx. This was just a one-off. I just wanted to find out what the hubbub was. And I think I'll just turn this into a series. It'll be a 30-part series where I read these essays out loud, commentate as I go, and allow you, dear listener, to think upon them yourself. Link to the article the essay is in the description if you'd like to read it for yourself. I'll do another one in the near future on these, and we'll just proceed, because I am curious, as I have been with many, many videos in the past, TEDx's included, about restorative justice practices, proposals thereof, and what would actually functionally replace police and or prisons. Because every time I hear an answer to that question, it never makes any sense. But until next time, everyone, thank you so much for joining me. Hope to see you on the next one. Have a good rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon.